So line 1 is about fear, resolving fear. We have to resolve fear in order to build a solid foundation. Example, silly one. Let's say you are afraid of heights and your wife really wants to, she loves heights, she loves vistas. She really wants to build her house at the edge of a cliff. Well, if you're somebody who's a builder and you want to build this beautiful lifelong dream house for your wife, you're going to have to resolve your fear of heights before you build that house. That's one thing. And then, of course, you've got to ensure that that foundation is super solid so that your house doesn't go sliding off a cliff when the monsoon rains come. Can you hear that Laveena has experience with this? The monsoon rain comes, and then you got this house sliding into, well, not into the ocean, but just to make it really dramatic, house sliding into the ocean. We don't want that. We've got fear there for a very good reason. Fear is here to keep us safe. Fear is not a bad thing. Okay, first line, we see it's necessary to have the introspection, investigation, solid foundation built on a foundation of getting rid of fear. And how do we get rid of fear? Well, we look inside. We investigate, we analyze, we look at all the details, we strategize, and so forth and so on. So this is very dense as far as density of frequency. First line, that foundation, that structure, you lay out the crossing all the I's or the T's and dotting all the I's in order to eliminate fear. So this is what the line quality has to do with. Okay, get rid of the fear. We want introspection, investigation, solid foundation to eliminate fear. And again, remember, first line, we're at the end of something here. It's the end of your life. It's the end of your time embodied. So what you will see then in your Bardo stage when you die, should the earth be in any of the 64 hexagrams at the first line level, is that you will see your personal life experience stored, potentially talking to the ancestors, because this is the time frame, the end of something, as far as this personal process, your own life, seeing elements of your own process, your own movie, your experience stored over time. So maybe going back to the very foundations of your life. What is that? Childhood. Going back to the element of your life that was at the original primal area time. Yeah, because Earthline is going to tell you what the particular angle is in terms of what is going to be revealed in the time sequence. So this is a place where ancestors are going to be a part of the whole time frame that you potentially have access to. Now think about, of course, this makes sense, hey? The first line is looking underneath. What's underneath of the time that you were born? Well, your ancestral lineage. So it's fascinating to think about every single one of your biological ancestors are actually living inside of your genetic code, that you can actually emerge in that sense and be present in your life with the ancestors. They can be there for you. Oh, this doesn't have to happen only in Bardo. It can be before, just so you know. I've seen it, I've heard it, witnessed it, felt it, been present with it. And it's rather amazing when you think about it, that you could ask your ancestors for help because they live inside of you. You have potentially have access to that clearly, visibly, as in the inner vision, when you die. This information is coming out of your own genetic system, your lineage processed through your own physical brain. So this is a fascinating connection to the energy of the ancient frequency that's part of the timeline that is there for you, should you die, when the earth is in line 1. Not time here. We in a body, trapped in time like mosquitoes in amber. It can be deeply confusing too, because you can't identify where you are and the movement of things. Because we are trapped in time on this planet, forced to view everything linearly, as in there's this linear You know, this comes before that, and then that is next as far as our form principle. I'm born, then I live, then I die. That's life, right? Linearly. So the form principle moves through space. This is our illusion as we spiral through space and time without a break until we die. But then the moment that you break through, as in you have lost the full functioning of the body because the design crystal and the monopole are gone, now we don't have the constraint of the vehicle. It's not time, not time. And that is the only way Ra would say to reference it. You step into not time. It's not time, it's not time. Not time is everything and nothing. Because it's everything and nothing, this is where the confusion lies. Because you can't find out, you know, your marker, your compass of where you can identify where you are. Because there is no where. Because there is no time. No time, which means that things are still moving. And the other thing about that is that it can be transcendent, as in time is not something that's logical in Bardo. It's not sequential. That means that you can defy the rules of time because you're out of time. Isn't that quite a fun joke? We're out of time. We're outside of time. So then there's a possibility to see the time before, because all of this information is stored genetically inside of us, where we can see in a way what's coming. So there's different variations of the flow of time. But when we're talking about the first line, remember, it's your own personal process, your experience stored, your ancestors going deep, really deep, related to your own process, the snow time. So Ross says, quote, I try to figure out what the hell is Bardo for if you're awake, because very few people have ever been awake. What is Bardo for if you're awake? You know, what is it for? Very few people have ever been awake. He understands what Bardo is for. It's for everybody that's always been not self. It's obvious to him what it's for, as far as it presents you with an opportunity to simply be passenger consciousness. Because obviously, if you're alive and you're identified deeply with this body, look, for 7 years, we are trained to identify as I, and the I is this body, right? So we are deeply enmeshed in the not self of I, the ego I, the I inside the mind that lies I, and just this body. So what happens is when you die, you get thrown into no time so that you get pure passenger consciousness, the thing that we're all looking for in human design. What is passenger consciousness? What is able to take in this experience of what it was in that form that you yourself could not gain access to when you were living it because you were not awake, aware. So there's a question, what people don't understand. Is there any value to it as far as the Bardo, if you're awake? He says, I mean, I can already describe it to you. So it's already part of my consciousness. I know the ancestors are inside. I know all of that. They've always been there. And I know, because of my mystical experience, that just about anything you have stored in your brain can be constructed into a hallucination. Anything. I mean anything. And after all, Bardo is your last hallucination, because that's really what it is. Just a hallucination, if anything else. Unquote. So it's a very different thing if you're aware. And who is aware that we are beyond compare? Who is aware? Who is watching? Remember, that's the thing that he always gives us to contemplate. Who's watching? Anytime you get in touch with passenger consciousness, who's watching? that you, the eternal you that was there. Okay, line 2. To be called. These are the barriers, the barrier masters. Remember, second line life is about being called. A second line personality design, whatever it happens to be, they're waiting for a call. Yes, to be called, to go on a mission, to have a purpose. And it has to be something that's pulled out of them. They're naturals, they're gifted, they have no idea. There are all kinds of calls, and remember, not all calls are right for you. For the death process in line 2, we're talking about surrender. Surrender, remember, the whole purpose of the human design system is to help you make decisions that you can trust. And it is about surrendering your mind, your personality, consciousness. I think, therefore I think I am. Surrendering that and letting the body live its life, following the body, allowing the form, the embodiment of the form to live its life. Surrender is not allowing your mind to decide. That's what surrender is when we talk about human design. You're surrendering to this vehicle, this form principle, the life it is designed to live. Quote, it's the life that has to be left alone, unquote. The life, leave it alone, will take care of itself. And you don't have to interfere with your life by surrendering to your body necessarily. It's the form principle completely, utterly, uniquely. This vehicle, as far as there's no point in doing anything else than living this one precious life that you, quote unquote, have. Remember, the body called you as a personality, the you that I'm speaking to, the personality of you. So for those beings who go through this, as far as the earth is in whatever gate of all 64, line 2, surrender, this is the moment that they realize all of this was just a facade, that the body was just rented, that it wasn't ever really even theirs nor permanent. They didn't even have the license to drive because the driver is the gate too. Nothing. This is you getting in touch with the eternal nature of you, to suddenly recognize that the body wasn't you, yours. You were just riding around as a passenger. So Bardo is trying to provide you as a personality crystal with a way of getting back to your natural state of being. Remember, our natural state, our as in personality, is out of body. Out of body is your natural state of being as a personality. Our natural state is not to be embodied, even though on average we've had about 64,000 different incarnations. It's not our natural state of being because we're riding around on top of a vehicle, brought out of the form as in surrendering. So every single one of these sequences, remember the 1, 2, 3 are very personal as a process. Every one of these sequences is stripping away the facade of what we thought life was. But especially this 2, this is the moment that they realize that all of this was just a movie and that they were watching eternally, always. That is what the passenger is here to do. The witness consciousness, the observer of this life. So the 2 in its surrender is seeing the barriers that have cut you off from your awareness and anything that kept you locked into the homogenization process. It's a very, very powerful thing, powerful seeing, because, 2s are naturally good at this, right? So because it's a second line theme, they've been unaware, and the not self has covered itself in all of these barriers, the barriers that kept you from awareness, the barriers that kept you from awakeness, the barriers that kept you locked into homogenization, locked into the process of whatever it is that you think of as you in your life. Yeah, the mundane, humdrum reality. I go to work, I super slave, I go home, I drink beer, I eat my pistachios, I watch TV. Not that there's anything wrong with that, please don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. But here in surrender, in your death, the shatter of the barrier process, the barrier is getting shattered. And out of that comes a recognition, this extraordinary gift. I see two, I think, gift. The giftedness of what it is to go through a death process that shatters all of the barriers to your awareness, your awakeness. Isn't that beautiful? To die in a line too. Isn't that interesting? Because that's the deeply, deeply, deeply spiritual line. Anytime you look, resonance principle, all the way around the wheel, all 64 gates, line 2, deeply, deeply, deeply spiritual line. When you enter into the 2 Bardo, you enter into the magic of the light. Everything is let go. All the burdens are gone. Everything drifts away. The most peaceful of Bardo states happens when the person dies with the earth in line 2. As a matter of fact, it's so peaceful and it's so perfect that it can't last. Why? Because nothing does. Everything moves on. And what's next? Chaos. Thanks. 3. The 3, when you die in a 3rd line day, is a hard time with death. The 3 is for life, but the 3 has a hard time in death. Okay, so the earth and gate, any of the 64, line 3, it's going to be a hard Bardo. For the living, the 3 is the most powerful living frequency we have. It's a truly incredible line. We are the crash test dummies of the hexagram, all 3s. So if we think about what the 3rd line is all about, Ra says, quote, "Oh shit, I made a mistake," unquote line, because that's basically what it is. We who are the 3rd line trial and error people, it's the only line that we have that's deeply connected to the material plane. Okay, deeply connected to the material plane. It's trial and error, it's bonds made and broken, it's the line of discovery. We are the ones who will martyr. We will martyr ourselves, okay? Because that's what it is to be a 3. Stand up and scream, "That doesn't work." Or maybe whatever your process is. Maybe you run away. "That didn't work," and you sob. Whatever it happens to be. Okay. So if you're carrying a 3rd line, go look and see wherever you have a 3rd line in your design. It doesn't matter whether it's your profile or your personality or your design or not. Whatever you see that's 3 is connected to the earth plane. Okay. So no other line has this connection of what it means to be a material form on a material plane, and that the material plane hurts, and all 3s know that. Physically, it hurts. Got 3s on the body side. Physically, ouch! Slammed my knee into that table, wall, whatever. Or personality-wise, oops, sorry, misspoke. I didn't mean to, oops, sorry. Embarrassment. Okay, so we bump into things. All 3s know that you bump into things. We can say this desk in front of us is an illusion. But if we walk too close to it and we hit the corner with our hip, it's going to hurt. So this is what it is to be a 3. We are connected intrinsically to the nature of the physical plane, the physical material plane. On that level, wherever you have a 3, it gives you equipment as far as, let's say you want to have somebody who's going to be able to work through bullshit for you. Like, test this. Now hire somebody who's a 3rd line, because they're going to work their way through. That's what we're really good at. Okay, this doesn't work and this doesn't work. And when I tried this, it didn't work. And this is really something to understand about the nature of being a 3, a 3rd line being, because we discover what's at the core of the material plane, the mystery of the material plane. So if you think about lines in context with the profile, as far as the 3rd line being a martyr, then you can really understand this archetype of chaos that we're going to go into when it comes to the Bardo state. Because the martyr is really the 3rd line life, carrying a burden with having to deal with physicality, either physically or mentally. So we are the ones, if you're a 3 like me, hi, I commiserate with you. Isn't it wonderful to discover what doesn't work? In the beginning, you're like, shit, no, I hate it. At the end of whatever your process is, let's say you're middle of the first 7-year cycle. Okay, you still hate it probably. You might have found little pieces where you're like, actually, that was kind of fun. When you get past your 7-year, you're like, fuck, I found out it didn't work. And look what I discovered. It's a very different experience. You still say shit or fuck if you're somebody who likes to swear like me. But it happens. It happens, and what to do. Now let's look at chaos. So Ra would use this concept of stepping through the mirror, okay? Through the mirror. This is the Bardo stage we're talking about. We're stepping through the mirror, entering into the Bardo keynote of chaos. So whatever one of the 64 hexagrams the sun and earth could have been in, we see the earth line in 3, you got chaos on your hands. Intense, unbelievable confusion that is fast to discover. Because us 3s, we want to break through the sky. We want to dig inside of the mechanics, the gears, and see the mechanism of life itself. So remember that our vehicle being embodied is a blessing, isn't it? Lest we forget, the blessing of the vehicle is that the body provides us a frame where we can tolerate the frequency of the totality of existence. Because guess what? When you're born, you're coming back into this planet, into this earth, there are certain things we need to forget, like the person we're being born to being our arch nemesis or whatever the case may be. So to tolerate the frequency of the vast expanse of the totality of existence, we have to have a frame. And what happens when you die with the gate, whatever, line 3, is that there's no frame. And the totality comes rushing in, and we have chaos. So we're seeing the shattering of the connection to the material plane. We're seeing the mechanics of life at work. This complete shattering. And underneath, what is it? Real discovery. Because the chaos for the not self, with this deep, deep, deep connection to the material life, that you get to the other side and you realize that the true discoveries in life are not about the physicality, nor about the material. Let's put an extreme example. You've got a being who they spent their whole life becoming a billionaire, you know, getting wealth beyond compare, quite nearly. And all they wanted to do was just accumulate, 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 accumulate. And then they die with the line 3 in the earth plane. And you realize chaos. Everything you put your time, attention, you know, heart and soul into. And then you learn that money was never the thing, or that material was never the thing. Because you just got your head poked through the sky, walked through the mirror, and you're seeing through into the totality of existence and the mechanics, stripping away the identification with this physicality, with this body. You've been caught up in, Jupiter, thank you, is in gate 35, line 3. And that is just boredom if we don't have change, progress, experiential process, right? Jupiter wants to expand. So what it's doing is giving us the ability to break through the boredom here. Yeah, life is just, caught up in the boredom. Why do people love the game of, let's say, life or love or money or health or whatever? It's interesting, doesn't it? Give us something interesting to do. Because we don't want boredom, we want new, we want experience. Third line, yeah? So if you get lost in the form principle, I wake up, I go to work, I make my billions, I go home, I kick my feet up, crack open my beer, eat my pistachios. Nothing wrong with that. It's just the repetitive boredomness, right? That has nothing to do with the uniqueness of what you are as a being beyond just this physicality. So chaos is a very powerful thing to experience, a difficulty indeed. Are you ready? What is it like to see this beautiful process? Think about, remember, angularity when we talk about line qualities. If the sun or earth are in first, second, or third lines, we know we have a right angle process. Again, a personal process. So how incredible it is that each one of us are able to handle this all by ourselves, should we die, with the line quality in 1, 2, or 3, because it's personal process as far as an enormous transition from life into another state, death. And we're left on our own in that sense of individual process. Whereas if we're looking at 4, 5, and 6, they're more of a transpersonal process, as we'll get into. So when you learn hexagram line structure, you always see me cut the top off of the hexagram and place it over next to it, the lower trigram, okay? So lower trigram on the left, upper trigram on the right, and now we see the line harmonies. When you're looking at anything in human design, we always have this construct of 6, for the most part. Just thought of base, and we don't have 6 there, but for the most part, when you're looking at this, you're dealing with harmonics. So there's a relationship between 1 and 4, 2 and 5, 3 and 6, always. This is the way it works at every level of the knowledge. As far as harmonically, when we're looking at this 3, we're seeing the end of the lower trigram process, and then we're looking at the beginning of the upper trigram, 4, 5, and 6. So we can see the balance through the harmony. We see the chaos of the 3. Harmonically, we look to the 6 and we see, vision. They're both actually the same thing, but in a different way. We're going to take a look at this in a moment here. So link this to the fact of, you know how when we look at nodes again, nodes of the moon, it is one road that we travel in our trajectory as we fly through space and time. One road that we travel, the gate on one side, polar opposite of the gate on the other, past and future direction, right? Or perspective, direction, environmental direction on the body side, perspective or awareness on the personality side, the nodes of the moon, portals in space. They are exactly the same thing. It's just they're labeled differently on one side versus the other. Same thing. This is the same thing. Okay. Line 3, lower trigram, but it's transitional to the upper trigram. Same thing with line 6. It's transitional to the next hexagram. And moving to the bottom, we see the first line is the foundation of that hexagram, the foundation of the lower trigram, just like we have the 4th line being the foundation of the upper trigram. So we have this harmonic relationship between time passage, time and passage, time passage. They're the same thing, just looked at differently, in a different way. And line 2, surrender. Line 5, reunion. Same thing. Line 2 and 5, they're both lines of projection, themes of projection. Just like these are both themes of foundation. These are themes of projection. These are themes of transition. So they're the same thing, but looked at in a different way. Let's go look at that and see, how does this work? Because the moment that you get to the 4th, 5th, 6th line, we're looking at transpersonal, very different, because not about personal process. The personal process is here, 1, 2, and 3. The 4, 5, and 6 is a transpersonal process. It's very different. It's not about your own inner process. It's the confrontation with something else in death. Because there's something beyond you that you didn't have in your life. And if you're aware, you get to see it there in your death. You get to see it when you were alive, if you were awake. But if you weren't awake, when you're dead, now you get to see it. Oh, lucky you. Isn't this nice? That's why it's so important for people to have Bardo. So when you get to the 4, passage is not about you anymore. It has nothing to do with you anymore. In that passage where it's going to be that things are there within the relational context in the sense it's no longer about you. Same thing with reunion, not about you. Same thing with vision, not about you. It is a totally different process because it's transpersonal versus personal. So now we have colored in the personal in pink, and we see the blue being the transpersonal. So you can see the trinaries because of the formulas, the mixes of both personal, okay, purely personal, versus purely transpersonal as a Bardo stage. So now you get to see how the different parts of the story are weaved together in these different ways that we could go into a Bardo, different ways that we could begin our Bardo. Okay, so there's 3 that are personal and 3 that are transpersonal. And note how one's going to be purely personal and one is purely transpersonal, whereas the other 4 are a mix of the 2. A mix of the 2. Very, very profound difference in the Bardo process. So line 4, opportunism. In the 4th line, life, we know it's about friends and family and familiars and kindness, meanness, and networking and opportunities and all of these things as far as how one might influence a person in person, the need for connection with others, the opportunism of our relationship to another. What is it purely? It's simply networking, good networking. That's what the 4th line is about. Schmoozing, connecting, yeah, communing, relating. This is their gift, the 4th line, to influence. And now what happens when they die? Anyone dies. With the earth in whatever of the 64 gates, doesn't matter. We're looking at a passage. So they're going to be seeing the network. When you step through the mirror as a being dying on a 4th line day, you get to see your network. And most of these beings are the ones who come back with stories from the boundaries of death. As far as, I got to see my family or my friends or whatever. The most common descriptions of a death sequence is the 4th line of passage. Well, of course, they're networkers. When they come back, they're going to tell people, especially if they're 4th line, you know, because thousands and thousands of documented cases of people coming back. Now, it's subjective because it cannot be necessarily proved, but the comments of people who have been revived from the brink of death, you know, the accidental death, where they talked about the tunnel, going through the tunnel, going through a passage, seeing all those people, you know, waving at them, smiling at them, reaching for them, but maybe they don't really have contact with them yet. As they emerge through the passage, these beings keep going through, keep emerging. All these people pulling them along as they emerge. Let's imagine we're walking through a tunnel, and as you get closer, you can see the face. And then you move beyond, and then you see another face or being or whatever. So for you dying on a 4th line day, when you enter into your Bardo, the beings that line the passageway are the forces, some of them, the crystal of consciousness forces of the bundle that you will return to. It's an alignment system at work. It's a deeply transpersonal process, these crystal consciousness forces of the bundle that you are designed to return to. So if we compare that with line 1, remember, out of time, no time, not time. This movement from the 1st line where we have, you know, going back through time and maybe to the ancestral lineage, where the passage is here not necessarily the person that you just left behind in the room. They can ultimately be, as so many described, because they do not know, but maybe felt some familiarity to it. Might be past lives, old fractals. The passage is about going back to the original crystal bundle. So it's a very different thing, very different experience, potentially. Fourth line of passage is about seeing the network, forces that are externalizing to you. This is the incredible helplessness that one might experience, is that somebody, let's say, if you fully enter into the plane completely adult, you're standing in a train station and going, where am I? What is this all about? What's happening? What's supposed to happen? Like, where am I going? Am I supposed to be arriving or leaving? What's happening? Instantaneously in that state, then there's all these people, forces that are there. And basically those forces are externalizing to you. It's not about what you give them. They're giving you an opportunity to be able to leave the plane correctly because they're externalizing to you, pulling you as far as encouraging you. And so Ra says, it, quote, it tells you a lot about what it means to be transpersonal, doesn't it? I mean, there's this incredible helplessness. You get to the doorway, you're dead. You get to the doorway, you don't know what the hell to do. You're standing there with this tunnel in front of you going, what do I do? What do I do? And somebody says, I'm over here, come on this way. That's why they're standing in the tunnel, unquote. So, real thing there with that line 4, the opportunism. Remember, in person, it's externalization and friendship and exhaustion and burnout. It's not just the description or the keynote for being dead. We can see also it's there in the living being, this externalization, friendship, exhaustion, and burnout, the aspects that are built into the complexities of life, lines, particularly profile. Isn't it beautiful? Profile is the most breathtaking, magnificent thing, one of the most breathtaking, magnificent things I can think of. It's like the pulling the magic rabbit out of the hat, you know? It's just incredible the way life has constructed itself for us to evolve as human species. So in essence, we see what it means to be a 4. It's not just that you give an opportunity, but in death, the opportunity is given to you, the forces that are externalizing to you. So if you want a good passage in this life, as a 4th line, if you are a 4th line, your network, your friends, your familiars, those that you know, the ones you schmooze with, the ones that you do favors for, the ones you invest your time and energy in, these are the people that help you build a satisfying, successful, peaceful, surprising life, whatever your keynote happens to be. Okay, it's not just that you yourself are the externalizer. It goes both ways. This is the transpersonalness of the 4th line. Okay, so the ones that are going to be there to help you out in the passage, if you happen to die on a 4th line day, those are going to be those people that have really been your allies in your process all along. They've benefited from your externalization. So the 4s are investing in others, ultimately. It's correct to get the energy back because there's always a give and take of energy. It's why it's so important for 4th lines to enter into relationships that are correct. Because if you don't enter into it correctly, you get exhausted and you get people fatigue and you get burnout, ends up killing you, which is what is the nature of being a 4 if you're not operating correctly. So the difference between 1 and 4, can you see how clearly, differently, each one is deeply connected to its own either personal process, or, that's 1st line, or transpersonal process. The personal process, introspective, is looking into its own right angle context. And the 4th line is more about the network, the other, this passage. So if you're in dying, or I sort of say dying because the actual death process, it's the death process. If you're in the death, because you have just lost your design crystal and your magnetic monopole, they've gone down into the earth, and you're just sitting there floating, you need help if the earth is in 4th line, and your people will be there for you. So Nobody going to be there for you when you look at 1, 2, and 3. Not in the same way. You're locked into your own internal process. Totally. Totally. But when you get to the 4, it's a different thing. 4, 5, and 6, you're going to need some help getting out because, quote, you can't get out yourself, unquote. Can't get out. Let's go look at the 5. This is about the practicality of things. 5 is nothing but being practical. It is so important for a 5 to be completely practical. But the moment that's during the lifetime, be practical. It's like one of the big things we hammer on people who are 5th lines. Remember to be practical. Be practical. But what happens when we flip to the other side and we move through the mirror? Reunion. So it's something that's ingrained in us that there is some kind of God outside of us, isn't it? It's something that Ra got a kick out of because as a 5th line himself, he was an atheist of a sort. But this is in reunion as an archetype. Let's say Peter is standing there at the pearly gates and he's saying, so happy to see you. Yes, welcome back. Come on through, reunion, that kind of thing. But it's not reunion in the same way as we saw with Passage, where you got the family. In Passage, you got those people who were in your life. Maybe the people who were pissed at you and they get a chance to know you as you're leaving because, the veil has been peeled from your eyes and now you're seeing things clearly. Remember that. You're seeing. Nothing to do but seeing as a consciousness, witness to what it's like to be an experiment of being embodied in flesh or identified with it anyway, since you're just floating. But when we get to reunion, this isn't finally meeting up with your soulmate or anything. It's a reunion with the forces at work. Seeing the forces as in the personification of the crystal bundle that you incarnated from. So 16 different archetypal forces. Remember, we have the 16 Godheads, if you will, quote unquote, because they're not necessarily what God is, the eternal, all the isness in totality. We are seeing 16 different archetypal bundles. So let's say you're like my daughter. My daughter was born during the time of Prometheus. That's the bundle that she incarnated from. That's the reunion that she's going to get to if she dies on a 5th line day. It isn't to say that Prometheus won't look like your uncle, if you know what I mean. It's coming out of you. So the archetypes that will take hold, whatever it is that you were really attuned to. So the illustrations of whatever Godhead, remember, every single gate could theoretically have its own God. The Godhead is a group of 4. So whatever it is, for me, if I die on a 5th line day, I get to see Kali. How nice, the great destroyer. Now, these Godheads, as far as what we think of as God, they're religious icons by our eons of cultures that have come through whatever time, whenever these gods were favored. But it's not like anybody really knew what they looked like. They were patterned after humans that were there. There's this, I don't remember what his name is, but when I lived in Mount Shasta particularly, I loved going into crystal shops. And there was always this rack of, it looked like the same exact face, but had different hair or eyes and clothes. And it would be, the spiritual teacher or master of whatever sort. So the reunion of the Bardo experience for you, if you die on a 5th line day, whatever gate process it happens to be, but it's the 5th line day where the earth is, that voice, that experience, that face is going to be the costume of who you're going to meet as far as the attunement or the mechanism that's bringing you out of your dead body, so to speak, even though you're floating around, to pick you up as far as the reunion, bringing you out through your Bardo state. So if there is any Bardo state that creates fear, let's try to put that into context. Fear is something that grows out of the spleen, ajna, Solar plex, we know spleen, it's for the death, the decay of the body. The ajna, it's mental conceptualization, so it's anxiety. The solar plexus, it is emotional, so we know that that is about nervousness. Those are the fears, okay? But crystals of consciousness, can they really be afraid of anything? We don't really know if that's a point. Fear is something that is enormously human because, yeah, we get this experience of death. And yet, as a personality, we never really die, right? So the deepest theme here can be a fear, as in the 49th gate, you know, spiritually, mechanically, mystically. Remember that it's the fear of nature and consequences like God, because that's the stream, mystical way of awakening is the path to find God. And then, oh, you realize that awakeness, it is contemplation of the now, the I am principle. So a 5 is, we die, Kali's in front of me, as if I came out of the Kali bundle, right? I lived my whole life, let's say, in not self, okay? This is one of the things before human design took hold. I really identified with a lot of my not self, yeah, the not self, living the whole life in an attempt to prove my worthiness and so forth and so on. But then, let's say, you know, wishy-washy about religion. Well, I don't know if there's a God. Maybe there's this and there's that. There's something, I know there's something more, right? But then all of a sudden, boom, you get Kali in your face and you're like, oh, wow. Not a fear that can be really translated as a personality, as what we think of as fear in this body, but like, let's call it shock, the shock of initiation, of seeing your archetypal nature of whatever that crystal bundle happens to be. Mat, Thoth, Harmonia, Christ, Minerva, Hades, Prometheus, Vishnu, whatever keepers of the wheel you identify with, Kali, Mitra, Michael, Janus, Maya, Lakshmi, Parvati, whatever one it is that you incarnated from. When you see 2, remember it was surrender. Oh, we got a breakthrough as far as the tearing down of the barriers. Those barriers got torn down. But then harmony was, we saw a real shattering, okay? That shock or shattering and the breaking of it. Here in reunion, shock, shock. So the 5, in harmony with the 2, a spiritual quality in embracing the nature of what it is to be disembodied again. In the reunion, like when your child's lost and you finally find them, there's this incredible relief. Shock, oh, you're there, and relief. So carrying the burden of separation, not just for one life, but for many, potentially. This being that came back into the incarnative process in order to discover what it's like to live unawares and then potentially be aware, whether in life or definitely here in death. That's what it's for. It's for awareness. The reunion is incredibly profound. Going back to your crystal bundle, it's a singular awareness. It's not passage. Remember, passage, 4th line, is we're looking at a larger human context. 5th line, no, one God, not all the gods, one God, okay? So passage is populated like the 4 in its world, all kinds of connections, all kinds of people, all kinds of forces, but the 5 is very specific. It's another force, that one force, yours. And in that reunion, there can be this relief and release after that shock, that suddenness. And then we have the 6. Ra says, I don't think that anybody, including myself, can really understand what a 6 is. Unquote. You know, the 6th line, it looks out over, you know, and looks beyond. It wants to see way, 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 way down the line of circuitry, all the way. Okay, it's not just looking for the other gate. It's not even looking through the stream. It's looking vast over the vast sea. So according to Ra, he felt like the hexagram, it seemed to be that it only really had 5 lines. We know that we use the 5th line quality as the end of the epitome of whatever that hexagram's differentiation process happens to be. Okay? So the 6th line doesn't care about its own hexagram, in other words. Go look at your 6 lines sometime. Go read the gate process that you have. Do you really care about that gate process? Like, truly? Really? Do you want to investigate it? Do you want to experiment with it? No. You're like, okay, what's next? What's beyond? Look at it. See it. I mean, especially if you are in your 50s and beyond, because that's when the maturity phase happens. Remember, 6th line, detached, unattached, observer, you know, it's looking beyond. It's not interested in the gate. So it may be somewhat surprising when you read analysis charts and you tell people about whatever their gate happens to be. If they're a 6th line quality and you don't take that into the account, they might be like, wait, what are you talking about? Because this is its way out, the whole circuit. It's looking way beyond even vision. So Ra would say on a 6th line day to warn to pay attention, because it's a good day of rest, because if you're not paying attention, something can bang into you and knock you off your feet. Now, if we look at the 3rd line, we know that this is trial and error, bonds made and broken. This is the physical plane. And here's the harmonic capability. 3rd line, transition to the upper trigram. 6th line, transition, moving beyond to the next hexagram. So the fulfillment of mutation. Mutation is a keynote here for both of them. Mutation and transition are keynotes for both 3rd line and 6th line. They're very deeply connected to each other, because when you're looking at a 3, here's this enormous power to discover what is physical, material plane. And on the 6th line, you get to the results of what all this 3rd line banging around trial and erroring has brought. The ability to see beyond, to have a vision. 1st line and 4, we're looking at one investigating and the other externalizing, a perfect relationship in this harmony here. And you look at, oops, I missed it. My internet is being a little wonky today. Okay, 1st line and 4, there we go. Now we're going to 3rd line and 6. 3 discovers and 6 explains. That's the difference. So 3 discovers, but 6 is going to explain, or it gets this advantage line-wise in this life, that tripartite life process, because the first 30 years it operated like a 3, and then it went through from subjective to objective, as in fleshing things out in terms of awareness, the objective nature of what it is to be embodied as a Buddha, Bodhisattva. We know that those are keynotes of the line 6. So the 6's connection to its own nature is limited, extremely limited. Why? Because it's not looking inward, it's looking outward, kind of like a projector looking at the other, not really caring about its own process. It's looking at the other. This is looking beyond, even beyond. So vision is the line here. One of the things that's so fascinating about the 6th line of vision is that it's brought back to itself. And being brought back to itself, it truly gets to see. So no matter what 64 gate line quality it is, the 6 that gets to see this vision. So when you think about the 6 in genetic continuity, color as an environment, it's shores, right? As far as variable is concerned, being on the edge of things, being on the border of things, not being down there on the shoreline. No, look up above, looking beyond, looking out towards the horizon, these border places. So the 6th line of vision in death, the earth in 6th line, whatever beings are dying at the 6th line day, they're seeing everything through oneself. This is exactly what it is to be a personality perspective that is 6 color like me. We see everything through the filter of our own selfhood, connectivity, as far as the significant vision seeing. It's the only place where the rules of seeing change. This is what it is to see mutation at work, seeing with different eyes, as it were. So for the 6, rather than being able to see the whole circuit beyond itself, because that's what happens, seeing the whole circuit beyond itself in life, we walk through the mirror, and in death, let's look. Let's look at everything through oneself. Let's look at connectivity. Let's look at everything, everything, everything. How is everything linked through oneself? Can you see it? Seeing through the chaos into the selfhood, the Buddha, Bodhisattva, embodiment principle. Unlike chaos, where there was this incredible complexity of existence that we saw that brought us to our knees, in the line 6, there's this incredible complexity. Suddenly, it aligns us to our vision for a moment of our own personal awareness. Suddenly, this deep penetrating into that awareness of being. And to take it in as a vision, that personal process of looking inward in order to see how everything is connected, everything. He says, quote, "I don't think there is any other way to really describe that. It's impossible," unquote. So when we look at all of these 3 different stages on either side that are harmonic to each other, they're all telling you the same thing, as in now. Here and now, be aware. Be aware here, now. Every single one of you is utterly unique, not only in life, but in death too. It's a magical sequence, whatever your Bardo sequence happens to be. No one of them any better than the other. No one of us any better than the other. We are all incredibly valuable to the totality because we exist, because we are here now. Even if we're not aware, we still exist, and we are still beyond compare. So be aware now. It's kind of like that be here now thing from Ram Dass. It's a very, very powerful thing when it comes to our dying, or I should say death. This is Bardo now. We had the death. This is Bardo. When it comes to our Bardo process, as in, if you pass from this plane, you get to experience this. If you start to do this work, working with people who are dying or death as a death doula of some sort, whatever, maybe you're just sitting next to people who are close to you to hold them through those last final stages of their life. To be open to something like this makes a real difference in someone's life, where you offer the beauty of the wonderment, the awe, the inspirational experience of whatever it happens to be, as far as what's true for you. Is it chaos or vision? What's part of the nature of this transition? Every single one of us have our own power, and each one of these, as wherever it begins, has power in its own way. And that's the beauty of what it is to be there, to understand that there is something beyond death, Bardo, that death is simply a doorway into this passage, to be cute. If you're going to be awake in this life to your uniqueness, your sovereign nature of making your own decisions as yourself, then Bardo is very natural, and it's a very special experience.